Dude, Derek, we're back. We're live, man, and recording.
Aloha, aloha to everybody in the world, brother. How are you doing today?
Dude, doing awesome, man. Appreciate your time as always, and love chatting with you. I know we've had a lot of conversations before. I think we've recorded maybe one or two, so I'm super pumped to like go live, record, and talk some cool shit with you.
Dude, yeah, we should have been recording and been live a couple minutes ago, talking about how the world and the universe really works.
Yeah, I mean that'll be for when we have like a paid group, a subscription to really give people the best content of the universe and how it works.
Well, dude, we've got the Greek here on the call, right? How do you say your a real first name? Apostolos? Am I saying that correctly?
You can say apostolos in Greek. You might say apostolis or apostoli. A little bit, give a little bit of like accent. Yeah.
That's beautiful, man. I'm reading a great book right now. I used to tell him speak at Funnel Hacking Live. I didn't like his speaking, but this book is amazing. It's called Obstacles Away by Ryan
Dude,
Holiday.
yeah, I read that. That's a fantastic book.
It really is. And he references a lot of the Greek mythology in there, right? And just the thought processes and the things they went through. Just those little antidotical, is that right? No,
Yeah,
antidotal
yeah.
sayings, right? It's just, I don't know, one of the most, actually, I think, powerful books I've ever read. Read meaning I like listening to the book.
Yeah, we're all getting that to the audio book. But dude, we could let's maybe like consider that, and I'll try to throw that in because that's a great book. The concepts of like stoicism and wherever there's resistance, that's actually what most people do is avoid it.
Yes.
Where actually you should just run straight through it. And maybe we're talking sales. I think that'll be very, very relevant. Maybe that's why you like the book so much.
Yeah, there is this, he talks about, well, the part I'm in right now, he talks about process, right? The process of things. And that's the thing that he was referencing somebody, Alex Saban from not Oklahoma, Alabama. Like they're always winning these football championships, right? Like nonstop. And he doesn't talk to the gentleman about boys technically, right? They're young guys coming out of high school to college,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
But
18, 20 something year olds.
yeah, exactly. So he's helping them, to transition to that manhood situation. The thing he keeps talking about is not about winning national championships or winning the SEC, but it's actually about living and being in the process every day, like right now, which really talks about the moment of right now. And I think that that's something I know with this monkey mind, where meditation and journaling helps, because I'm constantly just calming myself down inside, right? Not trying to get caught up in all the rhetoric, especially what's going on in the world today.
Right.
So,
Dude,
yeah,
I
good
love
stuff.
that. That's a great reminder on a fantastic book. So, well, I know we want to talk about sales. We want to give a lot of great training, advice, information. Quick info bio on Derek, this is totally unscripted, like the whole entire thing. If you didn't see a previous video that of a conversation I had with Derek, he started out in construction, real estate, right? Or maybe not construction, or real estate development.
Yeah, it was. So I did a lot of construction. Really, that was my business. I started at 25 is when I climbed into it. It was basically GCN, natural disasters. Like spent 4 months down in Katrina. Actually lived not too far from you down there in Rockville, Maryland. So that's where, yeah, I jumped into that. That was technically like the second business. My first business really was at 20 and I failed miserably, right? But as Yoda says, failure is the greatest teacher. And if you
Yeah.
really want to go all the way back, right? My first real business was shoveling sidewalks at 7. And I remember this guy wouldn't pay me. And my mom made me keep going back down and knocking on his door until he paid me. That was a big first like business lesson I think I ever had. It was
Dude, that's
wild.
a fantastic lesson to learn at a young age.
Yeah.
Because I'm thinking, dude, I was a kid when I was younger. I was like too shy to go to the concession stand, like when my older brother was playing baseball or something, and
Mhm.
buy myself some candy. Like my parents were like, here's the money, go buy it. I'm like, can you get it for me? Like that, it was just nuts. So I guess people who know me now, like, I mean, I'm not terribly shy, but like, you know, it would have been cool to learn that type of lesson. Like, go get this man to pay you. I would have freaked out.
You know, that's interesting that you say that, man, because right, it comes back to that old saying. God, was it like Buckminster Fuller, I think, who said, he's like, nowhere in a caterpillar does it know it's going to become a butterfly, right? And it's that transition through life of going from this really shy kid to this guy who actually runs his own business. Like that, to me, that exponential growth in between now and then, there's just been some amazing transformations and lessons you've learned, dude. It's huge.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. I like that cool perspective on it. Well, yeah, I mean, so you're doing training with digital marketing owners, training them on, you know, closing deals, maybe helping develop sales teams, things like that. So, I mean, when you're working with somebody for the first time, I mean, have you ever like worked with someone who's just so green to sales? I mean, what is like the number one thing you think they should know if you're with someone, whether they're an expert or like a very, very beginner?
You know, I'll tell you, I've been an entrepreneur for 21 years now. It's pretty much been mostly all in sales. I really just transferred into the digital marketing world a few years ago and was trying to put a round peg in a square hole. And then I came back to the realization that sales is really where I've done things. I've trained 300 sales reps, right, in my career. And I'll tell you, the number one thing that I feel like is the most important when you're coming in is that you just got to care about people. And it's really about growing relationships, because at the end of the day, I just feel like relationships are the most important thing that we can grow as humans on this relationship, right? Relationships with, starting with ourselves, relationships with our family, which are the hardest relationships generally to have, right? And then relationships with our friends. And then how do you just go from that core? And it's that core of caring, because I will tell you, dude, like back in the day, man, there was a time I just didn't care about people and I was just really focused on myself, right? And that's where the greed came in, and that's where the problems really started. Was when I got away from that piece. So luckily, right, in full circle, because I believe that history just repeats itself, right? Or at least try and learn the lessons moving forward. It is really slowing down and understanding, like, why am I really here? How do I show up and serve somebody, right? And get myself out of my own way. And the more and more I've done that, I mean, just in the relationship we've been growing over the last 6 or 7 months, right? There's just, it flows, it's simple. It's like, how can we truly help each other out? And I think that is probably the biggest thing, because, you know, listen, we all need money to live, right? That's just, there's no doubt about it. We all need money to go do fun things, right? But truly at the end of the day, when it comes to this piece that I found out personally, the piece of fulfillment in life is when I'm actually here truly, like, really serving somebody and getting myself out of my own way. It's cool to see newbies that I've trained that didn't know anything, you know, go and actually succeed. And some of them, many of them actually went on to become way more successful than I have, millionaires and multimillionaires, which is cool. It used to piss me off, to be honest with you, because they would leave, right?
Yeah.
And that was that attachment piece. Right?
Yeah.
You know, you owe me. I taught you this, right? But the reality of it is that people, you know, we go through those 3 things, right? We're a teacher, a student, and a fellow traveler. And we all wear those hats at different times, right? And it's just about switching them, you know, out. It's actually in the same conversation, right? Just knowing which hat to put on and when. So yeah, man, it's really about saying, okay, can I show up here, get myself out of my own way, and grow a relationship and truly serve these people.
Now, what do you think about somebody? Maybe this has been an objection you've seen in the hundreds of people that you've trained, but if someone's like, Derek, you're telling me to just focus on people and relationships, but I just got out of a meeting and I got eaten alive because I didn't know about my product. Why do you think I'm going to go into the next meeting focus on people? You know, if that is what you think is the most important thing, rather than you could have said, well, the most important thing is to know everything about the product or service that you're selling.
It's a really great question, man. So let me give you some context. You need to know what you're selling, right? But the reality of it is, at the end of the day, you can completely set that aside, because people only buy from people they know, they like, and they trust. Right? So there's actually what happens a lot in times, and you actually see this like people playing cards for the first time, or they're doing something they've never done and they keep winning. It's like that newbie like excitement, right? It's that newbie energy, right? So, obviously there's technical levels here, but I've seen a lot of reps in the beginning just like start killing it because they don't know what to talk about. So the only thing they feel comfortable talking about is themselves, right? But truly, man, you can show up. I just got off a call actually with a gentleman that's not too far from your neck of the woods today. He, super cool as a presidential candidate. It wasn't anybody like super famous, right? But he's somebody who just dropped out. And it was just cool because it was just a conversation, right? He was actually I just talked with him. Obviously
Yeah.
I know what we're offering and what we can do for him, right? Which is, by the way, has nothing to do with politics. But it was really like boiling down, like, why are you doing this?
Uh-huh.
This is why I'm doing it, right? So you've got to build that commonality as quickly as possible, the rapport piece, hands down. If you do that properly, you at least give yourself a fighting chance to get it to the next step. Without that, it doesn't work. And I will tell you this, no joke. I would say 95 to 98% of every sale I've made in my entire career, I knew it was going to happen within the first 30 seconds or minute. Now, there's definitely people I didn't end up earning their business, right? But it's that instant connection, man. Do you have that rapport with somebody before you even start talking, right? Like, dude, think about it. The minute you and I met, we clicked. There wasn't this like, unknowing. It was just like my best friend Sean calls it. When you meet somebody you get along with, well, you're kindred spirits.
Yeah.
Right. And from there, then you can actually have a chance to grow. Without building that rapport, it just won't work, man.
Yeah, and I guess like if I'm thinking of that that concept and idea, and yeah, you got to know your stuff and people. To recap your words, people buy from people because you can be like, hey, I got the best thing, and if I'm sitting there, I'm Mr. Decision Maker, and you're trying to sell me, I'd be like, yeah, you got a great product there, but I just don't like you. I don't like your vibe. You've been narcissistic. You've been this, that, and the third, and we don't have a relationship. So why? Because when you buy something from someone, you engage in a relationship. I don't care how you want to phrase it, because if that's someone that you have to trust to deliver. And for a lot of services, like it's going to be recurring, and it's not going to be just like a one-time thing. And you also have to know, even if it is a one-time thing, well, what if it doesn't work the way I want it? Are they going to be there to support? Are they going to like honor this refund or this policy? Or even, another example of like, you don't have to sell me on your sales training. Like because I know you and I know the type of person you are. Like you could be like, hey, Paul, like I got the sales. Got the sales like seminar. It's gonna be an hour. It's gonna cost this much. You want it? I'm like, yeah, I do, because I know you, and you don't have to tell me about the format, the content. That would be just selling on the product. You don't need to do that because that relationship's already there. So I think I get what you're saying for sure. I'm thinking of like playing devil's advocate on.
Well, no, dude, it's a beautiful thing, man. Because here's the thing about this. Here's the other side of it. So somebody's probably out there is literally saying, well, yeah, what if you don't know them? Well, dude, I've had 30, well, I could look up the exact number. I think it's like, 42 conversations in the last 3 weeks, right? And of those 42 conversations I've taken, and by the way, those are all completely cold people that I did not know before they showed up on my calendar. I think I've done 20, I took 22 to what I call a deminar, which is like a demonstration and a webinar in one, because it's really just for one person, right? So
I gotcha.
I said that mistakenly, and I was trying to explain it to my best friend. I'm like, yeah, I do a deminar. He's like, what's that? So anyways, it's kind of coined the term, right? But didn't know any of those people. It took about 22, I'd say 24. Well, dude, can I just tell you the real numbers, man? Let's not mess around. Let me actually like tell you like legit numbers.
Let's get it.
All right, so 48 total calls, 28 demos, 19 no-shows, 18 follows up, and 12 closes. So 12 out of 28 demos, man, that's pretty damn near almost a 45% close.
Yeah.
I didn't know a single person before they showed up. Now there's things that we do to make sure they're qualified, right? But I chose to, right? I did a qualifying call with them, see who they are, and I pushed into my deminar. And then I actually closed them on the spot. And I think one or two of those I had to follow up the next day. But most of those were just 2 call closes. So I will tell you hands down, there's a long way to get to this point, is that if you build rapport and you show up and get yourself out of the way and you truly are there to really serve the people, then you will build rapport quickly with somebody. If you don't show up with that position, right, then you will burn it all day long. So it works no matter what, whether you've known somebody for 8 months or 10 months or however long we've known each other now, or somebody you've known for a half hour. It works, man.
Yeah.
Really does.
I think, that's what kicks in kind of like you can say the subconscious mind, your instinct, but just when you hear that number of 70% of communication is nonverbal, that's the type of stuff they mean. Like you can be saying the same words as the next person, or if they're copying your exact sales script, if they don't have that focus on the person, the relationship, it's going to come across in their voice. It's going to come across in just that split second pause or hesitation or whatever it is that the other person picks up on and comes and they receive it and interpret that as a feeling of, I don't like this guy. That's how those feelings crop up from those like nonverbal communication, and if it's positive, then I'm like, I don't know what it is. I just like this guy's vibe. I like the style.
Dude, absolutely. And I think that again, I come back to, like, for me, that starts in the first 10 seconds, 30 seconds, first minute, right? If I feel like I'm having to pull teeth, then I'm talking to the wrong person. It's just that simple, because everything's, in business, right? It's a business partnership. Really, you're regrowing a relationship, but it takes a business partnership to be able to grow anything, man. I think one of the false things I used to think, and I hate this saying, and it drives me nuts, man. And I shouldn't use that word because that's a really bad word, right? But it drives me nuts, man, when somebody says, I'm a self-made millionaire. Freaking bullshit, dude. Nobody's a self-made millionaire in this world unless you win the lottery. It takes a team of people behind you and years to be able to do that, right? There are exceptions in this world. Mark Zuckerberg, still, it took him a team of developers to do it, right? He didn't do it on his own, but somebody could say, he's a self-made, he's not. Well, he's technically a billionaire. Dude, it takes people to build anything. It takes processes, and that's where the ego comes in. And that's the thing that I know that was dragging me down before, man. So absolutely, dude.
That's
relationships, buddy. Whoops.
Well, then, would you say that's the most important thing you can do when it comes to sales is build relationships, or, might there be something else to expand upon?
But think about it this way, right? And I was caught up in this, back in the day, and at times I still am because I'm human, right? But truly, dude, life is a marathon and not a sprint. Right? I know obviously we've got some really damaging things happening in the world today. So somebody could argue that. You only live as long as you live, right? But truly, most people's lives is a marathon. And if you understand that, it's not the sprint trying to get to the finish line. It's just saying, okay, how do I build this? How do I build this over time? And how do I build it to last? Right? Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So that's how I would view it, man. Is anything worth building, it takes time. It takes time. I don't see it around, because there's really 3 commodities, right, in life that we personally have control over. My time, my energy, and money. And money's pretty debatable, right, at this stage in the game. So, it's really, where do I want to spend my time and where do I want to spend my energy? And instead of like wearing yourself out, Jim Quick, I remember going through one of his trainings. It said that at 50 hours of work, after 50 hours of work, it's diminishing returns. So unless you're like somebody crazy like Elon Musk, who works 100-hour weeks and is just these total like super eccentric people, most people, again, after 50 hours a week, you start getting law of diminishing returns. And so it's really pointless to be doing anything else. And it's not just focusing on that business. It's like, how do you live a better life with energy? Meaning like, what time do you wake up? What do you put in your body? You exercise, you take time for friends. It's all of that, man. It's all of that pieces, because it comes down to those 2 commodities.
It's fascinating, especially there's a lot of schools of thought. I think what's been the most predominant for a while is hustle, grind. I'm
Yeah.
starting to see some people that are like, you don't need to do that. And anytime there's someone that takes a far stance, there's going to be people who are going to say, oh, no, do the opposite. Everyone's trying
Right.
to,
Of
everyone has a
course.
philosophy on it. But I totally agree. I mean, there's no glamour in working 70 hours a week. There's no glamour in being, oh my God, I'm so busy and I can't do anything. Like, you hear that from your friend,
Yeah.
you're like, and especially now, like, and none of my friends do that, but like, dude, I've been a business owner and I've been through
Yeah.
working 7 days a week, nonstop. Like, and nothing against anyone with a full-time job, but it's like, dude, few full-time jobs like demand that much. And if
Oh,
you and if you are like most of your time, if you're forced to be somewhere for 8 hours, like a lot of your time is being busy, not being productive. So don't brag to me about being busy. It means you might not be managing your business well. You
yeah.
know?
Yeah, absolutely, man. I think that the other piece that to add on to that is to be able to actually make sure you stay in your core genius,
Yeah.
right? Because I feel like for myself, after leaving those sales companies I had, right, like there for a few years in this digital marketing space, I was trying to put a round peg in a square hole, and it wasn't until I took a step back and said, okay, what do I love, what am I really good at, and what is the quickest way to actually help myself out and help others out at the same time. And
Mhm.
that was doing sales and teaching sales, right? And I think that when it comes to sales, I want to wrap this up about this particular point is like I learned this from Seth Godin. I think this was there's a video out there on it, right? He tells there's three stories to be telling,
Uh-huh.
right? There's the story of you, meaning me. Why am I relevant in this world? What do I care about? Why am I doing what I'm doing? Right? That's the easiest story to generally tell. Then there's the story of us, right?
Mhm.
Because from there, and when you tell, let me back up, pardon me. When you actually tell the story of you, if you do it with vulnerability and you do it in a place of really actually showing who you are, you start creating that real bond with people. It's just cool, man. That's actually the funnest part of the entire sale, man. Is really just bonding with people immediately, right? And just getting to know them. Like I'm always fascinated to hear people's stories. Like when I talk to them, like your zip code is this number. Where is that located? Is that where you're from? What took you there? Some of those basic questions, but it opens up so much to talk about, right? I mean, dude, how often you get on the phone and you're talking to a presidential candidate? Like that just blew my mind, right?
Yeah.
It's like, what? Right? How did you end up here? Right? And that dude came through a funnel for crying out
Oh,
loud. Him and
really?
his business, there was two of them, yeah, and his
Yeah.
business partner. So it was just like being really curious, like, well, you're not in it anymore. What's going on? What are you doing now? Et cetera, right? And then, so it's that story of vulnerability. And I'll share with the gentleman today. He actually shared about the reason why they're doing quote unquote life insurance is what they're selling is because his dad passed away abruptly, and they weren't covered properly, and so there was a lot of expenses that fell back on them. So that's why they're moving forward doing this. And I was like, dude, I get that. Like my real dad passed away at 52 from a heart attack. My stepdad passed away at 67 from leukemia in like 30 days. Dude, that stuff right there is the goods. That's the reality. Like we're here to connect and bond and like help support each other. Way more important than anything that happens on the call, right? And
Yeah.
so it's like this is the story of like, cool, I love what you're doing. It makes sense. There's that synchronicity, right? When you do that and position that, then you go on to that second piece, the story of us, because that's really what that is. It's the story of us. There's that connection. Like, can we be business partners? Can we work together? How do we grow together? Right? Because the more we grow, the more, dude, literally in our business, right? When we pay for ourselves, the faster we do that, the happier the clients are. That's just a reality, right? In
Right,
any
right.
business, for that fact. When do I get my ROI and how quickly can I get it? Well, cool. Well, how quickly can we grow our partnership? Right? And so that's the second piece, that the story of us. That is also, in the world of like probably the hardest thing to tell, right? Because technically that's what politicians are doing all day long, right? Whether good, bad, or indifferent, they're trying to tell a story of us, right?
Right.
Super hard to learn. Then it really brings it around to that last piece. It was the story of now. Like, why should we work together right now? why is now, time of the essence? Why do we need to move forward? What are the things that are holding them back? And how do you position that in a sales, right? Like not false scarcity, but real scarcity, or like even like really good guarantees, like it results in advance or things of like that nature. So when you can tell those three things, and you're actually doing that with authenticity, and you're doing that with vulnerability, man, you've really set yourself up for success for the long haul period.
Man, that's awesome. I mean, that's like three, I don't know, for me, mental models always help me learn because like, let's say you're my sales trainer and I'm, doing sales. I don't have you whisper in my ear, tell me what to say. So in that moment, I have to think, not just what would Derek say, because that might not be the best thing because it's going to come across different, but what mental model can I go off of? And the story of, I mean, this is going to be not in the same order. It's the story now, story of us, and the story of you?
Of you, myself, right? Which is really you. Story of you.
Okay.
Story of us, and story of now.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Well, and I'm thinking of like, I guess like the scammy, like the shitty salespeople that give people a bad name are, the ones that aren't listening, they're pushy. And because they're checking boxes. And if they were to happen to speak to someone who's a presidential candidate, I feel like they'd be like, hey, and because I've been on the receiving end of a lot of sales calls. Yeah. So what do you do? I was a Democratic presidential candidate. Oh, cool. Yeah, that's awesome. So anyway, in their mind, it's like, ask what they do, get a response, move on, because they don't really give a shit about the person. But if it's like, hold the phone, pause, let's talk about that. I'm interested. Because of course they want to talk about it. And it's totally. Like the amount of time that you actually like talk business in a lot of meetings. That's why that thing exists. This meeting could have been an email. Well, a lot of the meetings is that interaction, is that thing. So like you could spend 45 minutes of an hour-long call talking about that person being a presidential candidate. It's like, hey, listen, we got 15 minutes. Let's talk about why we're on the sales call. It's going to be quick, efficient. They're going to be like, you know what? I'm having a good time. We have a good relationship. I'm interested. What's the next step? I mean,
yeah, spot on, man. Two things remind me of. One is a blind squirrel can find a nut every once in a while, right? So if you just rifle, because sales is a number of games to some extent, right? But really, at the end of the day, it's like businesses. They always say business gets done on the golf course, right? Or when you're in the wine cellar.
Yeah.
So that's so that makes a lot of sense, man. Again, dude, I can't stress enough that people buy from people they know, they like, and they trust. It's that simple. And it doesn't matter what you're selling, right? I mean, you got to have some context, and you got to have some technology understanding, or some technical expertise of what you're doing, or product knowledge, right? But truly, at the end of the day, people just buy from people, man. That's why I think relationships is the most important thing, period.
Hell yeah. Well, what do you think? I mean, we talked about relationships as being the main focus when you're going in, with the assumption that you know your product well enough, but to be people-focused, relationship-focused. We talked about 3 stories and how that can help frame your approach to the entire call. What else do you think people can be doing to set them up for success when they're either starting in sales, or if they're already some vets that might be listening in?
Yeah, I think one of the 2 very important traits to be able to go into any sales situation, one is certainty. The person, I heard this from Russell Brunson, right? Certainty always wins at the end of the day. So if you can show up with that, even if you don't understand your product, but you understand that you can still serve them, it's that certainty, right? And I think that there's really a second piece that's kind of tandem to that. It's really is objectively. Meaning, how do you objectively show up, get yourself out of the way, right? And be able to look at the situation from an objective point of view. Meaning, like, can I really, truly help this person? And if I can't, I got to be cool with that. Because trying to talk somebody, I mean, there's a ton of like NLP people out there. Oh, you can totally manipulate some psycho, the English call it bidding. You can get somebody to do your bidding for you, right? Which is a term I'm hearing a lot lately. Like there's ways, but ultimately, man, at the end of the day, those never work out, right? Because they're not coming from a place of real service and real authenticity and trying to do the right thing. Because I always tell clients, because clients get nervous sometimes, like, well, what if I get in this and it's not really working for me? Reach out and chat. Let's communicate, right? Like, let's communicate what's not working, what is working, right? What went well and what's not going well. And it's really understanding that, can I really objectively show up at this situation, ask the right questions, or at least do my best to drill down to what the real point of what's happening here and find out what's underneath the hood, right? Because it's always what's underneath the hood, man. Like, you could have the most beautiful car on the outside, but if there ain't no engine in it, it ain't gonna go anywhere. Right? So it's able to show up, bond with them, and start asking intelligent questions. And when you do that from a place of objectivity, as opposed to like, oh my God, I got to figure out how to try and sell them, it changes the whole thing. Because what you're doing is what you're called doing is called holding space. You're holding space, emotional safety, I've heard it called. You're holding space for them to kind of really see their own shit in a lot of ways. Like, when I ask business people, and I've been there as well too, like, what is your CPA? With client, acquisition cost. I don't know. Well, how do you not know that? That tells me right there that you haven't done enough work to understand what you're really trying to accomplish, right? Or, things of that nature. And it's not trying to, sorry, go ahead. It's not trying to downplay them. It's not trying to belittle them. It's just trying to understand, like, I need to understand where you're at now so that I can see if I can actually serve you. Does that make sense?
Dude, totally. And you got me hyped because you hit on something that I've had to work on. Something I want to address in a second of what you were saying of handling things objectively. Maybe I'll just do it real quick now, but like saying, hey, can I actually serve you? Hey, I don't know if we're the right fit, because a sleazy salesperson can think, oh, I say at the beginning, well, we're not a fit for everybody. Cool. Well, that's surface level. But if midway through the conversation, you're like, listen, I don't know. If you're like casting that in, then that shows that you actually mean what you say, and you are willing to walk away from it, which is very powerful. Now, what you were saying about holding space because I've been there where I'm like, yeah, what's your, customer acquisition cost or your lifetime value? And they're like, yeah, I'm not certain. I have just avoided that next thing that I think is truly what separates probably someone who's okay and pretty good at sales to someone who's closing a lot higher, is to be able to say, oh, well, how do you not know that? Because to me, my natural inclination is I don't want to create conflict, but a little bit of that conflict, because that's where you can be in a place where you're not supplicating to the prospect of like, oh, please, let me please you in every way. Like, let me just give you everything. It's showing the prospect that you know what you're talking about. And that's going to generate a lot of respect and a lot of other stuff too. So I don't know. What other examples of that? Or I don't know if I just had to throw that in there.
No, I love it, dude. And you really bring up a big point, because here's what I've learned when it comes to humans, right? Either people are towards pleasure or away from pain. The reality of life is most people probably, we could go 80, Pareto's law, 80-20, right? If we want to break it down, but I think it's higher than this. I bet that 90, 95 to even higher % of all people will only move if they feel pain. Yeah. There's a few people that move towards desire and pleasure and things of that nature, right? And that's a lot of entrepreneurs for sure. But even in that, man, and I had to go learn this stuff. This wasn't stuff I was just born with, right? I had to learn this the old school hard way, because when somebody asked me that question the first time, and I was like, I don't know. How do you figure that out, right? And I think the second part of that is it's the tonality, right? I think tonality is like 35% of communication, right? So it's not how the F do you not know that? It's more like, well, do you think it would be important to understand what that is and how to get there? Well, yes, I do. Yeah. Because no idiot's going to, I guess they could say no, they'd be really idiot. I'd be like, well, then you know what? We probably shouldn't be talking anymore. Right. And here's the other thing too, man, in our world, and when I say our world, I'm talking about the digital marketing space, right? Is that And that space, and even outside of that, there's little processes that people have to go through. People have to literally be touched. I think it's 13, 14 times now before they buy anything, right? And that's where campaigns, that's where real marketing comes into play. That's where this whole long funnel comes into play to actually get in front of the right people and to stay in front of them, right? And keep creating value for them. If people come to my calendar and they haven't done a couple very important things like fill out an application or watched a couple videos, which I can tell if they did, I will cancel the call. I'll be like, no, I'm not going to waste my time, and I'm definitely not going to waste yours, because if you don't do these 2 or 3 things, I know that you're not in the right place. Because we could go deep into the buyer's journey, right? Eugene Schwartz. I tell that story every day, man. This book's like $450 on Amazon, right? It was written 50 years ago or whatever. There's this buyer's journey, and I think a lot of people don't understand. And that the last time I heard this is that only 3% of the entire market across all industries is buying online at one time. If you really think about that number across all industries, 3%, it's not a very big number. And then you got to start dividing that down into your own niche. Right. And the reason why is because people are in a journey. There's an arc they have to go through. So it's understanding where they're at in their journey, and then making sure they take the right steps to get to the point where when they do show up, they're actually a qualified buyer. Then you got to qualify me more on the first call before you even move them to the Deminar, right? And so it's a process, man. And I think that feels like it comes back around to where we started this conversation. It's always a process. There's no shortcut. There's no magic pill. There's no freaking Harry Potter wand, right? It's a process, man, and everybody has to go through it.
Yeah, that's fascinating. And I mean, for people who, I'm not naturally process oriented, and especially for something that's very dynamic, like any type of one-on-one interaction or any type of human interaction, my thoughts years ago would have been, well, you can't, process, that's going to take away from the authenticity. But the buyer's journey, I mean, that's one process to show how you go. And if you think back to yourself, if you've ever been sold on something, you can think of, well, initially you were skeptical. Then you were kind of like, this might be interesting. Then you had some questions, some doubts, and then how to overcome that. I mean, there's things like, the 5 stages of grief. That's a process that people go through when they're grieving. Like, that's kind of scientific. Absolutely. So, well, you go ahead.
Sorry, brother. I just want to throw this in there, man. There is this great YouTube video out there, and it's called the Nail in the Head video. So whoever's watching this, you get a chance to go look it up, because that's like the first stage of the buyer's journey that, Eugene Schwartz talks about. They're not even aware that they have a problem. And so just look up online, I think it's couples nail in the head thing, man. It's only like a 3-minute video. It is classic, because that's the first stage. People don't even know they have a problem. Yeah. Then they become problem aware, right? And then they become solution aware. Step 3, like, oh, there's multiple solutions. And they start researching, and they start doing product aware, multiple products, and then they become a buyer, right? Yeah. So people need to understand that is highly, high valuable. And if you really think about that, as a salesperson or a business owner, if you step back and understand that process about the people you're here, your prospects, then you can really start to understand how you can show up and serve them. And so by the time they land on your calendar, they've fleshed themselves out to be a very highly qualified buyer.
Yeah, and I think the skill and experience is being able to see that journey in real time, because they're not going to tell you. You have to be dynamic, fully in the present moment, but also be aware of the future of where they're going to get to, and helping guide them and knowing exactly where they're at. It's a tough balance. It's a lot of fun. And it's really cool when you start to be able to see it, but it takes a ton of awareness to do it. But like if we were to show, for anyone who isn't familiar with the buyer's journey, you can put it on one sheet of paper. It's like, well, what? Yeah. And that's why I paid $400 for this stupid book to get it. Or you can just hear me and Derek talk about it and not pay obviously buy it. There's a shitload more in there, but it's being able to see it. And that's what, that's why we can talk about this all day, but like someone's going to have to practice it or get mentoring or coaching or whatever. And I think for me, awareness is the first step of knowledge. Just by being aware of a concept in business, you're I don't know, you can figure it out, because everything that we learn about and read about already exists. So you can
Yes.
find it independently. It's like Wim Hof, that the Belgian breathing guy who I think is amazing. Well, his breathing techniques are similar to these folks in the Himalayas. They didn't have any
Oh,
contact,
totally.
but they both figured it out. He figured it out, through his own methods. So, well, I wanted to.
Dude, there. Sorry, but it just reminds me, and I just love talking to you, dude. I love these topics. Dude, there's a great song out there by the Beatles, right? It's and I'm spacing the name. He's like, you can't sing the nothing that hasn't been sung. You can't say nothing that hasn't been said, right? Those lyrics are just going through my head right now, because there are very few people that are inventing something new. Literally everything has just been passed down. Like, dude, again, Ryan Holiday's book, right? Which, he was just so monotone on his speech. It was highly, a lot of great information, but it was just like falling asleep. But his book is like amazing. And he's talking about stuff that, Pericles and Alexander the Great did, a couple thousand years ago. And those things still remain today, because Aldous Huxley said, men, and I was like, men/women don't learn very much from the lessons of history. And that is the most important lesson to learn from history, right? Is the shit just keeps repeating itself, man. It keeps repeating itself. So where do you want to start with your intention, right? Wherever your intention goes, your energy, your energy flows, attention there, action takes place, and you do something. You do that subconsciously, or you're going to do that with awareness. And it's just understanding, like, what are the things you want to bury yourself into and learn, right? And when you do that, you start creating value, you start showing up for people, and then magic starts happening.
Dude, that's powerful. I'm going to write that. I'm going to check this recording and transcribe everything you just said, and watch you.
Well, hopefully Zoom is transcribing it for you, man.
I think it does. Well, I mean, I definitely have the audio to just easily do it. Well, God, dude, that's deep, and that's so dope. If we'll get back to that if we have time, because there's a couple things I did want to touch on as we were talking about process, and you'd mentioned a tool called Process earlier. Is that something you want to expand upon, and just maybe why that's powerful and why you utilize it?
Yeah, I think it's hugely powerful, right? And to give some context around this, right? So there are situations that people need things now. Like a blender of mine broke about 2 months ago, and so I need to get online and find a blender. Very next website I show up to, right? I'm getting retargeted by blender people.
Right.
Great marketing. Love it. I love seeing that, right? As a marketing person.
Right.
The other piece of that is that, dude, again, it comes back to people know, like, and trusting you. And the only way you can build a relationship with somebody is over time. So, people, and there's also dollar figures that have to be involved in here, right? So, most people online, and I don't know the exact numbers today, but, most people will just kind of purchase things online, maybe under $1,000 and not think twice about it. Maybe it's 800, whatever, the magic number is. But if you're selling a service, if you're selling some type of coaching, like, you've got to get on the phone with people. You got to qualify them in that first call. And then you got to give them some time to figure out, do we resonate? Are we kindred spirits? Can we really, see ourselves working together? Let that resonate, let it marinate overnight, and then take them to that second call. Sure, you could try and push them. A buddy of mine, he does one call closes, but he's selling like a $12.95 product, right? And most of it's a DIY, and he has a little bit for them, right? So he's doing that one call. I think there's some leniency there. But if you're really trying to build something that you're actually going to create a service for people over time, then you're going to have to do, in my personal opinion, to do 2 call closes, because there's just not enough time. There's so many moving pieces in the first call, trying to put together in your head to ask the right questions, to position all the things that, are involved in those tactics, quote unquote, in the first call. It just takes time for information for people to sink in. If you have all that buyer's journey leading up to that point, they'll actually get a lot of the information. And so you can really build that rapport on the first one, show that you know that you can get them results, and then you can move them to that second call.
Interesting. And then, I mean, in between calls 1 and 2, I mean, they're going to be doing due diligence on you, your company, everything you told them. That also gives you a time to do even more due diligence on them. Like, hey, well, they told me all this. Now it's time for me to maybe verify it.
Yeah, absolutely. I've had people do due diligence on me on the second call. Why they're like, hold on a second. I see him doing something, and then I'm like, what's going on? They're like, I'm looking you up right now. So, I mean, it happens, man. It just happens. I think that I know from my personal experience, man, I get excited when I see things I've never seen before that I think could be really valuable, right? And every time not every time, that's a wrong word. Most of the time when I've purchased that on first blush, I've ended up wasting money. Let me give you an example. So I bought a program out there from a guy. It cost me $7,000, man, and I kind of bought it at this like one-off type thing. He got me excited. I know looking back, man, I just knew he was doing some NLP on me, and I could just see it. But I fell for it after I bought his program because, dude, in the online world, what I've been trying to figure out is like how to use keywords and all the tactics, right? The tactics of the day. Literally, this is no effing joke, dude. After I paid for his program, got into it, the first thing he told me to do is go start a meetup group. I was like, are you kidding me? I didn't just pay $7,000 to somebody tell me to go start a meetup group. 3 of them, technically. Oh, we'll teach you how to do it. I'm like, first of all, I was literally living in Costa Rica. I don't know, on this side over here. It happened. This is actually Uvita. I was in Playa Manuel Antonio, which is a little bit further north of this. I'm like, I'm living in Playa Manuel Antonio at the time. I'm like, there ain't meetups in Costa Rica, dude. And I was freaking pissed, and he wouldn't give me my money back, man. So, I just think the best decisions I've made is I talk to somebody, I let it resonate with me, I meditate about it, I journal about it, and then I can know moving forward that this is the right decision or not. So I want to give that same option to people as well too. Because usually if they're buying on the first call, there's just too much excitement and there's not enough of like, logical thinking, like, is this really the right fit? Dude, you never go out on a date with a girl and ask her to marry you the first day, right? So why the hell would you do that with a client?
Nope. Well, and when you think about it, like it shows that you're thinking of the long term because you want to be sure that you can serve people the best, and that if they're not the right fit, yeah, you could help them, but you're thinking like, I don't want this person in 3 weeks to be like, this sucked. I don't know. Cause again, you're like, well, because maybe they thought they were getting something and they're getting a different, like, wait, no, this is exactly what it is, just because they got the wrong thing, because they got all hyped up on emotions. Because, and it's not like being, you could think of it as like, yeah, it's service, it's whatever, but it's also like you're looking out for yourself and your business. Like, you don't want customers that are pissed. And even if it might be their own fault for buying the wrong thing. And I mean, with your case, I've been there. We can talk about that offline too. I've been through a similar thing of paying something high ticket that I didn't really enjoy, or was a lot different. But yeah, you want to be sure that it is the right thing. And if people are way too hot, buy it. Yeah, take my money. You're like, hold on. Like, I don't know if we're there yet. Because you want to be sure that it's truly going to serve them and that they're making the best decision on the facts and the emotion of it, and not only the emotion. If they're only buying with that and they're not checking anything, like, what's your deal?
Absolutely, man. You're spot on, right? Because I mean, it's business partnerships, right? Again, we keep coming full circle, and there's the 3 main ones, right? There's lead generation, there's coaching, and then there's e-com, and then you can drill those down, right? I mean, e-com is a whole different ballgame. You're just wanting people to buy the greatest knickknack, if that's the case, right? I need to have the spinner, because that's the hot product, right? But if you're really trying to build a business that really means something long run, and not to say the income doesn't mean something, but if you're really trying to build a business, a legacy business, something that keeps showing up and creates value for people over a long period of time, and get that real CLTV, right? That real client lifetime value. But then, dude, you got to realize that you're going to a business partnership. And when you recognize that, it's not about just the dollars and cents. It's about, that's a piece of it, very big piece of it, but it's also about, can I work with this person? Is this person coachable? Are they going to listen to me? Are they going to buck the system? Or are they going to be constantly fighting me on things? Are they not going to do, the things we need them to do in order for this stuff to work? Campaigns don't magically appear. There's a lot of back end work that goes into it, and some video production and testimonials and setting things up. I mean, it's a process. So I just think that, again, can I work with this person? Can I see? Here's a great example. So I just got done reading a book by Steve Sims, which is fascinating. It's called Blue Fishing. This guy literally it's a great book. It's a short book too. He went from like laying bricks to like, he literally does this for a business. Somebody will come to him, pay him if they want to experience what it feels like to be like James Bond in real life. He'll schedule the flights, the cars, the models, the whole 9 yards. Like that's what this guy does. And he's made a name for himself in Hollywood. He's like the go-to quote unquote guy, right? He has something he calls the chug test. And of course I was just laughing thinking about it, right? And he's like, any person you're talking to, and he's British, so he has this British voice. He's like, can you see yourself going and chugging a beer with him? If you can, great. If you're not, boot him. And I'm like, yeah, that is actually really something cool to think about, right? Can I really see myself sitting down, having a beer, a glass of wine, smoking a J, whatever people do out there, right? Can you really do that with somebody? And if you can, then you know there's a chance that you can grow something together.
Yeah, that's fascinating. I've heard that with interviews, like as like a job prospect, but like it's the same thing of a sales call, because if same way, if you hire the wrong person, it can have detrimental effects on your business. If you take on the wrong client, they may take up an inordinate amount of time and resources from you and your team. And it's like, well, the scope of work hasn't changed. And that's where, other things like scope creep, making sure that you set expectations, but just like the sheer headache, and there's a emotional tax that is taken when you deal with dickheads and assholes that you shouldn't be working with.
Dude, it's so exhausting, man. It's exhausting. That comes back to those three commodities: time and energy.
Yeah.
Dude, I love talking to you because it's great time spent and it's great energy. Like I feel uplifted chatting with you, right?
Oh, dude, for sure.
The energy vampires, man, they will suck your shit dry all day long, man.
Dude, that's what I was just thinking. That I was like, the energy, because you can't, more likely if you're talking to a friend, a family member, they're going to be bitching about the person at work that they can't stand. I mean, rarely do you find someone who's like, let me tell you about my favorite person at work, and we're just it's usually that witch over here or that asshole in accounting, he was getting on me. That's what people mostly talk about, and you want to avoid those people.
All day long, man, as often as possible, dude. My time is too short, brother. I'll be 47 years old on the 8th, so just in a few days. So if I really look at my life, could be half glass empty, if you will, or half glass full, but I probably have 40, maybe 45 years left on this planet, dude. I mean, who do I really want to spend that with?
Yeah.
I mean, because unless they come out with a new magic pill or the chalice that you drink out of, 90 doesn't look all that great for most people.
No.
So 90 plus, I'm like, I don't know, man. I don't want to have anybody worry about changing my diaper for me. So
yeah, let's hope for both our sakes by that time, maybe 90 will be the new 60.
That would be trippy, man.
Yeah.
That'd be so trippy.
Well, dude, I want to we still got a smidge of time left. I want to be respectful of your time, but we talked a lot about what people should do, how to approach it, mindsets to have things like holding space, to call process, and just being process oriented with the buyer's journey, being aware of that. I mean, what are some things that people typically trip over, or common pitfalls that people maybe should try to avoid when it comes to sales?
That's a really important question, man. It's always, as the saying goes, right, what to say, when to say it, and what not to say, right? But I think even before all of that is the most important thing the biggest pitfall, I think people make is when they show up, is they bring their own stories, past failures, past shortcomings, past pitfalls, and show up as that person on the call. Right? They show up with the story of oh my gosh, I failed at this person. What if they ever find that out about me? Or, oh my gosh, I didn't do this well, or I didn't get this result before, right? Oh my gosh, now it's actually bringing those past stories into a current situation, when the reality of it is the other person's responsible for their own results, they're responsible for their own life, they're responsible for the only things that they can do. So it's not bringing those things forward and trying to project those onto somebody, right? And it's projected not by literally telling people that, or sometimes We do, because we're human. We get emotional things come out, right? I think there can be some vulnerability there, but it's not projecting that energy. It's not projecting like my failure is on you, Paul. That's the reality, right? Because we all have our own journey. We all have our own lessons we have to learn. We all have our own stage that we're in. But when we show up with those things in hand and we're like nervous about them, they come through subconsciously. And if you can truly get yourself out of your own way, show up to serve, become objective about the situation, and be able to actually just talk and communicate with people, and the reality is things usually work out the way they're supposed to work out.
I agree. And I totally, I mean, I've been through that because I was going to ask, and the realization came to me. It's like, well, how do you stop that, those stories from cropping up? But you said it, you know, you address it as like you show up and serve. And I could 100% attest that if you are serving, you cannot possibly feel the feeling of serving and then also feeling a shittiness from a past story.
Right.
The two can't coexist. So if you're like, well, yeah, well, I'm trying to show up, but like, yeah, I had the worst sales call ever an hour ago, and now I have to go into another one. Like, I feel like crap. Well, focus on the service.
Yeah.
And then that's how you get out. Because I don't know, I'm part of, I think, my shyness, getting back to what we were talking about. Was that at the beginning of this call or before we even recorded? Yeah. I was like just hyper analytical of just everything. And so I'm thinking, well, how do I, if I'm feeling like this, how do I get out of it? And it's just that logical analytical mind wasn't helping me, unless it was listen to what awesome people tell you. And if it's like, just go serve somebody, forget about yourself and serve someone. Well, I don't get it. You don't have to get it. Just feel it. And because that's reality. Same way you feel a vibe on someone. Like, we're not here to get all woo woo. We can talk about that later. But it's emotion's real.
It is so real, man. I mean, even just doing this stuff, right? Like we're talking about. So two little hacks that I like to implement when I'm doing sales, right? One is I really got to be listening. How do I actually listen to what somebody's telling me? Is I focus on my breath. When I'm focusing on my breath, I'm having to listen because I'm not focusing on their words, right? I'm focusing on my breath, and I can hear what they're telling me, right? So that's super important. The other thing too, man, is if I'm in a bad mood and if things aren't flowing right, and I have those days, there's days I have 3 or 4 calls in a row that, man, I just am like, God, I want to get out of this, right?
Yeah.
I will actually get up and go walk, where I'm at. Or one thing I love to do if I don't have enough time is, I get online and I look up SNL skits, right? Saturday Night Live skits or some comedy, man, because
that's great.
There's nothing more fun in life, period, than laughing, right? Well, that's kind of debatable, but humor, right? That's at the top of the category for me, man. And when I'm laughing, I'm having fun, and then I actually show up to the meeting in a good mood, even if I'm in a really shitty mood, like 3 back-to-back calls that suck. If I can just spend 5 minutes laughing and getting myself out of my way, I'm bringing that new, fresh energy forward into the call. And the way you show up to a call from minute 1 is going to set the tone for the entire call.
That's interesting. What do you think of this? Let's say you get to that 4th call. You've had 3 shitty ones in the same day. You have one more. Would you ever be like, hey, Mr. Prospect, listen, I apologize in advance. Like, it's been a hell of a day, and I apologize if I'm like low energy. I don't know, something like that, where you're acknowledging off the bat just how you're feeling, or I don't know.
Yeah, that's a good question. I've done it before. I'd say it doesn't feel right when I do it, right? I'd actually rather push the call off. And I'm sure you've had this happen, right? It's like, I remember there's been some times that I'm like, gosh, I just don't really want, I know I have a call coming up. I don't really want to do that. And then all of a sudden I get a text message or an email, hey, I'm going to have to cancel today. And I'm like, yes, right? Because then it takes the burden off of me of having to cancel, but that doesn't happen all the time, right?
Right.
I just really feel, man, that there's time you got to step up to the plate, dude, and you got to do your best. And that's all we can do, right? I'm not perfect. Some sales, man, I get on the call, dude, and they just go completely haywire and nothing comes out right. Things aren't said right, like at the wrong time. It's just all these little like things when you're really, my goal is to truly master sales, like, cause I love it, right? It's communication to me. But there's times that, you know, I'm trying to do things a certain way and they don't work out. And it's just like, throw the towel in, man. For me, I'm like, there's going to be somebody else. Like, hey, listen, this is who I am. Like, sometimes words just are like fumbling over my own tongue and I can't say what I'm trying to say. And I'll just laugh at myself. Be like, what I'm really trying to say is this, or let me back up and say this. So, you know, you got to show up, but you also got to just be human, man. People are people.
Right? That's true. I mean, and when you do show up for that, you feel better about it.
Yeah.
And again, I've done both things where I'm like, I'm just gonna get through it, but I'm like, no, I'm gonna bring my best self. It sucks because everything in my body's like, you know, you have no momentum, you have no feeling of like, let's do this. You just do it anyway, and then you're like, shit, I did that. Right. You know, you feel really good afterwards.
And dude, sometimes, man, I've had this happen many times when I'm just not in the moment, ready to roll. I talk to somebody that's super cool and they lift me up, right?
Yes.
You connect with awesome people. And then all of a sudden you're like, oh, cool. Here's somebody I don't know. And we have all these things in common and now we're connecting and their energy's literally like lifting me up. Right. And that's huge. And shining your light on their darkness, and not to get too woo on that stuff. Right. But man, I think there's a very, very valid point of that. So you never know who's going to show up, man. And all you can really do is your best and be human, dude.
Dude, absolutely. Love that, man. Well, dude, I mean, we could obviously just keep rolling. If next time we could do like a marathon call, like a bottle of wine each, or like a 6-pack of beer. It's like, we're going to chat until we're done with this.
Dude, that is awesome, bro. Have you ever seen Drunken History?
I've seen a couple of them. I'd should watch more.
Dude,
Drunken Marketing.
Drunken Marketing, man. That's exactly what we should do, is just get wasted. I'm down for that, bro. I'm totally down for that.
Okay, we'll do it. Let's get we'll get a couple people on, and it's like, here's the stipulation. Okay.
All right. That would be fun, man. Drunken Marketing. I love it, dude.
Yeah. Sweet, dude. Well, dude, Blast covered some fantastic stuff. I mean, I love just because I think, you know, we had the concepts that you addressed, but like you really went into a lot of details. To me, it all came alive, and hopefully if anyone is seeing it, I mean, it's hearing the concepts that you're presenting, and then you making it become real, and hopefully there's a lot. I think I got a lot of insight, I know for sure, on everything. So really appreciate it.
Same here, brother. Man, I love talking to you, dude. I'm always awesome to hear what the Greek mythologist has to say.
Yeah, well, on the Drunken History, we can talk more about like astronomy and space and conspiracies.
Perfect, man.
Word. All right, dude. Well, take care. Appreciate it.
All right, brother. Talk to you, man. Take care. Aloha.